For saving lives of people on railway tracks to building the brand foundations for Geo, Satish helped clients navigate complex business landscapes. Satish believes that everything a brand does communicates. This is more this is more pertinent in today's fragmented experiences play a vital role in shaping perceptions and improving brand culture. He has applied in principle through various ethnographic studies to unearth unarticulated insights and inform strategic decision making. Satish is a huge proponent of multidisciplinary thinking. He has crafted ways to solve client problems by taking inspiration from various fields, including gamification, design thinking, behavioral architecture. He has designed ideation framework to lead strategic thinking across large clients such as Coca-Cola, Google, Flipkart, to be like Kia Motors, Big Bazaar, Disney India, Joffrey, Urban Company, and P&G. And has impacted successful outcome for these clients across brand positioning, consumer strategy, advertising, service design, product design, business opportunity, and consulting. And to today's lecture, I requested Satish to reflect on this lecture is hosted by Interaction Design, but to share his insight about where the field is moving towards, what is happening in the field, where things are moving, what are the big agencies like Brand and other global agencies thinking about in this space. So how these students can start thinking about this space, and broaden their horizon of what this field is and is going to be. So that's the intention, and thanks, Satish. So over to you.
Great, yeah, thanks, yeah. Great, thanks, Vijay. Are we ready to go? We are like good to go, right? And start off. Okay, brilliant, yeah. Nice seeing you, yeah, after a long time. So it's good. Wonderful. So y'all can hear me clearly, right? I don't need to modulate my voice too much for this one. Okay, great. Okay, brilliant. Hi, how are y'all doing? I hope y'all are doing fine. So yeah, like what we're going to talk today is, I think, treat this more as a conversation. What I want to do is explain some points of view through examples. And I think that's better, to look at things through examples and then try and understand, okay, fine, what are we saying? So what I really want to happen after this lecture or talk or conversation is, I want you all to, go back and actually just kind of, start looking at things differently. And I think that becomes very, very important. What I'm trying to kind of, get out over here is what I actually call greater than design. And when you're looking at something like greater than design, you might wonder, like to say, what is greater than design? And this is what we will kind of talk about today. To say, there's this whole concept of greater than, and we'll talk about that as we kind of come along later. And how can you actually create that experience as you go along? So if we have to start with first, right? Famous man, everyone knows him. And by the way, before that, this is not the famous man. This is me, the not so famous man. The next slide is the famous man. But yeah, that's me. I'm available on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, happy to connect with you guys. Yeah, and it's great. Let's move to the famous man that everyone knows about, right? Now, here's the thing. See, you guys are doing interaction design. And of course, I don't have to tell you this, but the whole world, when you tell people that you're in design, everyone thinks it's about what it looks like. But no, it's not about what it looks and feels like. Design is how it works. And Steve Jobs says this. And there should be some merit in something, right? So if we have to take this as the starting thought for whatever we're going to talk today, see, the first thing that you kind of have to keep in mind, is that when you look at interaction, interaction is very, what I would call, instinctual. This is an example of something that I did some time ago, where we actually worked towards saving lives of trespassers when they cross the railway tracks. So incidentally, the largest cause of accidental death in Bombay is when people cross the railway tracks and get hit by the train. And we realized that one thing, the big reason why people get hit by the train and they're not able to do anything is because they can't judge the speed of the train coming towards them. And you realize that what you needed is you need speed references. Because when you're driving on the road, right? And what you're basically doing is that you are seeing trees pass by, you're seeing poles pass by, and your brain automatically judges the speed. But on the railway tracks, there are no speed references. And that is what we really wanted to do, was to say, how do you create speed references? And this is what we did. We created this whole concept of yellow line. So even if you Google right now, if you Google Vadala experiment, that's what we did. That's the project that we did. And this is what it does, is as the train keeps coming towards you, the yellow lines start disappearing under the train. The faster the yellow lines disappear under the train, you know that the train is coming fast. The slower it disappears under the train, you know the train is coming slow. So I don't have to tell you the speed of the train. I only have to tell you whether the train is coming fast or the train is coming slow. Now, this is how you're interacting with your environment. And I wanted to make this point to start with, is to say that interaction is very instinctual. We came across this whole place, the whole scene of what we call affordance. And I'm sure you all would have heard about that term as well. But the very fact is to say that, what does it look like? What does it make you feel like doing? The way the hammer is kind of built is made for you to hold it at the center, and that's instinctual. So the way you interact with a hammer is very instinctual, because you're not holding it at the top, you're not holding it at the bottom, you're holding it at the middle. And you're holding it at the middle because the handle is designed that way. So the point I wanted to make, is to say that if you look at interaction design, we have to move away from the screen. Because everything is about the screen. Of course, I understand, interaction design is about how you get people to do stuff, how you get people to buy stuff, how you get people to click on things, and that's all about interaction. But what's really important is that we have to move beyond the glass and seek life outside it. Because if you look at today's world, the way today's world has actually changed is that it's existing, interaction exists beyond the screen completely. Right from Alexa. This is an older example of a car Bluetooth function. You switch it on and you press it for a long time, and then it says connected, and then you're connected. Look at the way AirPods are kind of driving interaction. The very fact that the right AirPod will not go into the left cavity and the left AirPod will not go into the right cavity, that's interaction. And that's what we're really saying, is that interaction has to move beyond the screen. And a lot of times with respect to interaction, you don't even really need a human being to actually go out and interact. On Swiggy, we've all done this. We are interacting with bots and we are canceling our orders. And the bot is getting us to cancel our orders seamlessly. Within a minute, from 5 to 5:01 p.m. and that is there and it's done. No one is sitting over here and doing it for you. It's the bot that's doing it for you. So you start to, the point I really wanted to make over here was to say, when we look at interaction, we have to look at interaction as a whole. We don't need to look at interaction as acts. We need to look at interaction as everything that is happening, because interaction is kind of, creating everything for you. And that's what we're saying, right? The idea is to look at interaction as an input. Interaction is nothing but an input. You touch the screen, you press a button, something happens. And that something happens only because you interacted with the screen and you touched that button. But what's really thing is that experience becomes the outcome. And this becomes important for you to keep in mind, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create interaction over interaction over interaction, and then you're creating an experience out of those three interactions. And that's where, if you kind of look at this diagram, of course, you can't see it right now, but this little brown thing is what interaction design is. And it's great, if you learn about all of these things. But it's important when you're learning about whatever is in this brown circle, you are keeping in mind whatever is happening in these green circles. And that becomes very, very important. Because One thing to keep in mind is what really connects interaction with the experience is what we call context. And context becomes very, very key for you to start doing anything. So look at it this way, right? While you're interacting for a particular thing. When you're interacting and you want to get things done quickly, you have booking.com does that so well. It tells you, hey, you know what? This thing is going to go away. 4 people are looking at it. It creates urgency. And it says, if you book within the next 5 minutes, you'll get X% off. They know you want to book and they're driving that context for you. They're driving that urgency for you. Let's talk a little bit about context. See, context is king, and that's very, very important to kind of keep in mind. I don't know if people have heard about this example, but we used to use this a lot. It's not supposed to look ungainly, but this is a photo of a toilet urinal. And the reason why I'm putting this over here is that you see that little fly over there, right? We've seen this all now. Like, all men go and take a leak, and that's what we end up doing. Now, the fly originated at Amsterdam airport in Schiphol. Now, this is what was happening. They realized that people are kind of going in between transit and they're just soiling the entire floor. Now, look at it, right? There is a context of hurry. There is a context of relieving yourself. There is a context of trying to get things done quickly. And as a result, you're just kind of spilling all over. What they did was something very, very simple. Is how do you interact with the piss pot? You put a little fly over there and what happens? The first instinct, like I said, interaction is very instinctual. The first instinct is to actually go about aim at that fly. The minute you aim at that fly, you're constantly trying to aim at that fly. And before you know it, you've finished peeing and that's it. What Amsterdam airport really realized is that by just putting a small fly over there, a picture of a fly over there, they reduced spillage by over 80%. And that's the power of context. That's the power of what you can do. That's the power of actually taking instincts and actually going about driving interaction. And that's the whole point, is to say that if you have that context, what we really need to do is leverage the context. The more you can actually go about leveraging this context, the more you can create what I would call a greater than experience. This is a great example. I'm sure you all would have seen about this and heard about this too. To say that Coca-Cola came out with this whole point of the sharing can, which says it's an actual normal can, but you can actually twist it and turn it down into 2. And you can take one and you can give your friend one and you can go about share. Now look at how this interaction is developed, right? This interaction is a great interaction because Coke is saying, hey, you know what? I want people sometimes have one Coke and that's too much for them. Let's get people half Coke and let them enjoy it. They make fun out of it. And that is what it is. So all of these examples is going down to what I'm calling a greater than experience. Now you'd be wondering, what is a greater than experience? I know you guys are in Gujarat, which is a dry state, and everyone knows about greater than the gin, but this is not the greater than gin experience that I'm talking about. The way I'm kind of looking at greater than experience is very simple, right? Is like I went back and said, it's a sum of all interactions. The whole experience is greater than the sum of all the interactions. So you might have 10 interactions to go, but what really you have to pull out and take out is that the entire experience. And that becomes very, very important. And that's where, one thing, you guys are all interaction design students. What we really need to kind of keep in mind is to say that, how am I keeping the big picture in mind? How am I actually looking at the experience? Because ultimately, that's what we're saying. The whole experience, the experience is greater than interactions, guys. So keep it in mind. Yes, you are looking at interactions, but what are you doing to actually go about driving that experience? And I think that becomes very, very important. So I want to keep going back to this fact that interaction is instinctual. What we really need to do is leverage the context. Keep these 2-3 things in mind, because it's very important to try and say, okay, fine. How do I go about leveraging the context? How do I go about creating a greater than experience? because that's what it is. Like 10 interactions are going to lead you to something else. And that is important for us to know it. So great. If we have to look at this as the basic conceptual understanding of what I wanted to talk about, is to say, let's leverage context, let's create instinctual interactions, let's go about creating a greater than experience. All of this sounds good, but you're like, hey, you know what, Satish, all of this is wonderful, but how do you go about creating a greater than experience? So let's talk about that. Let's build a framework, because ultimately, if you look at everything through the lens of a framework, you just understand it better and you're able to apply things better. So we have to try and go about building a framework for greater than design. When I'm saying what is greater than design, right? How do you go about building a greater than design? See, the first thing is very, very important if you have to kind of, drive this whole idea of greater than design. The first thing that kind of keeps in mind is to say that everything works in a loop. The first thing is all about the context. To say, what is this design landscape available to us? In what context are we designing? In what landscape are we designing? And that becomes very, very important. And once you have the context, what we really need to do is keep in mind what's the objective. I mean, why are we designing what we're designing? Why is it that we need to do something like this? I go back to the Schiphol airport. The context was really that people are in a hurry. Hey, you know what? My objective is I need to reduce spillage. Hey, how do I go about reducing spillage? And the answer to that is drive behavior. To say, how do I influence people to pee in the pot? And as simple as that. And that is what you're trying to do, is you're trying to influence that particular behavior through design. Same thing with Coke. How do I go about getting people to share their Coke with people? And hey, this is what I do. How do I go about getting people to understand what's the speed of the train? And that is what you really want to do. You want to try and drive behavior. You want to try and drive a particular action. And what finally ends out is what we call the outcome. So finally, what is that end goal that you want the design to achieve? So even if you look at this as the framework, right? You can call it COBO framework if you want to. But ultimately, this is what greater than design is all about. To say that the more you focus on the context, the more you focus on making interactions instinctual, the better you will be able to influence the outcome for everything. And as interaction design students, this becomes very key. This becomes the base of understanding everything. So if we have to, let's say, take this framework out and then try and say, okay, great, let's look at what are good examples of interaction design. How is it that we can actually go about creating a greater than experience? What are the various ways in? And there are quite a few ways in, because I looked at, from the time Vijay and I spoke, I looked at a lot of examples. And I realized that all of the examples that I looked at are coming in from one way or another. And there are various ways in. So you can either design for flow, you can design for social credit, you can design for what we call the unarticulated. A lot of people are not going to tell you what they want. The point is to see it and say, yes, you know what, this is what it is. You can design to bridge gaps. People don't know how to do things. People don't know how to kind of do from one thing to another. People don't know how to connect. Can you design to do that? Because all of this will start looking at the context. All of this, you will start looking at what's the final outcome. All of this will help you decide what's the behavior you want to influence. Design for personal collections, design for substitution, design for fun. And I think that becomes very, very important, to try and say, how do I go about looking at what I am doing, which is interaction design, which is what you are doing, which is interaction design, and actually taking that and zooming out and seeing the overall experience. And it's very, very important skill to have as a designer, right? Because you need to zoom out and see the entire picture. But what you also need to do is zoom in and pay attention to the details. Because when you're actually going about designing stuff, it's very, very important for you to start paying attention to the details. But the minute you start zooming out, you can see the entire picture. And this is what, right? It reminds me of one quote which someone told me while I was in the States. Someone once told me, hey, you know what, Satish? If you want to see the skyline of Manhattan, you have to go outside Manhattan to see the skyline of Manhattan. When you're in Manhattan and you look up, what you only see are buildings. So my whole advice to you all is to say that don't get caught up in the buildings. Don't look up inside Manhattan and see the buildings and say, yeah, this is what it is. But the minute you get outside Manhattan, you know, okay, fine, this is Empire State Building. Oh, that's the Chrysler Building. Oh, that's the Rockefeller Center. Oh, this is what is happening. And that becomes very, very important as designers. Zoom out when you can, see the entire big picture, zoom back in again to start doing what we have to do. So if we have to, let's say, look at examples to explain how greater than design results in a greater than experience, how do we go about doing that? Let's start with the first one, right? What I call design for flow. Now, designing for flow is interesting because the idea of flow is very simple. Everyone talks about customer journeys. And now, like I used to do customer journeys back in 2007 when no one knew what customer journeys were. I would show people customer journeys and they would be like, oh my God, what is this? This is brilliant. But today, everyone does customer journeys. But the point is to say, how do you look at the start and the end of an experience and actually go about influencing it the way you want to influence it? There is this brilliant club called Turquoise Cottage in Delhi. And if you've kind of looked at Turquoise Cottage in Delhi, it's a cool thing. So this is what they did one time, right? They said, let's start experimenting a little bit. They said, you know what we'll do is everyone gets into a club and gets stamped, right? I mean, all of y'all have gone into a club and you get stamped. So what Turquoise Cottage did was they said, you know what, instead of a stamp, what I'm going to create is I'm going to create what they call a buddy stamp. And a buddy stamp is nothing but a QR code. Can you guys see my cursor moving around? Can you guys see my cursor? Yeah, okay, great. You can see my cursor. So see, look at this, right? So when you went into Turquoise Cottage, you pulled your hand out and then they stamped you. And instead of a normal Turquoise Cottage stamp, they gave you a QR code. And this is brilliant. You're like, damn, what do I do with this QR code? But here's where the fun starts, right? And this is where you look at interaction design, the series of interaction which creates the entire experience. So what you do is you walk in, let's say you walk in at 8 o'clock, you walk in and at about 8:15, you hold your hand up and you scan the QR code. And when you scan the QR code invokes an app and the app gives you specials on drinks. And you're like, damn, this is great. This QR code is doing fun stuff for me, man. That's great. Now you're feeling hungry and now it's lunchtime, it's dinner time. So what you end up doing is you scan the QR code again. And now what it does is it gives you specials on food. You're like, wow, this is great. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You've like partied all night and you're like, damn, you know what? It's time to go home and I can't go home. I'm like super drunk. I need transport. What do? You scan the QR code again. When you scan this QR code again, what really happens is they can give you a call a cab service. Like, damn, see, look at this one QR code contextually helping you interact differently at different times. It's not about the time. It's not about the clock time. It's about the context to say, yes, you know what, you'll be drinking at this time. You will be eating at this time. This is when you want to leave the club. Let me call you a cab service at this time. And next day morning, what happens? You wake up and what do? Right? You scan the QR code again. You wake up, you're lying in bed and you scan the QR code. And what does the app give you? The app gives you hangover tips. Now, this is the example that I wanted to start with. Is to say everything that we do. And I go back to saying, this is a greater than design. This is a greater than experience because the experience now is larger or greater than the sum of all the interactions that are there. So this was one way, right, that Turquoise Cottage went about actually going about building flow. Let's look at another example, right? So there is this brand of running shoes called On. simple ON, on. Now, this is what they did in New York City. They created a retail experience. Now, again, right, with interaction design, like I told you, we need to move away from the glass. So now what they've done is they've taken technology to the entire store. They've created a 90-foot running track. And what you see over here, if you see my cursor going along, is what they call the magic wall. What you see over here, the front of the magic wall on the inside on new store. Now, what this allows you to do is very simple. As you run, what they tell you is, like this man in the gray t-shirt is running. They tell you, you know what, start running. I want to go and analyze your gait. And this is what it does. This wall has got built-in sensors at the back that analyzes every step of your gait and tells you, you know what, this is your running style. You know what, this is the kind of shoes that you need. You know what, this is where you're going wrong. This is where you're pronating. This is where you're supinating. And that becomes important. Look at how technology is playing a role in helping you buy shoes. Again, I go back to saying this is the context. You're leveraging the context. The whole behavior is to try and say, the behavior is not to get them to say, I want to buy the shoes. The behavior is to get them to think about what shoes are right for them. And more than that, that's what, look at how technology plays a role. This person is standing over here. There's this little grid that is kind of being created that tells them exactly what size of shoe they should buy. Now, this is what I'm saying is that we need to design for the flow. We need to design to complete that entire journey. And look at how these two examples are all about the customer journey. Look at how these two examples are all about to say, what happens when someone walks into the store? How do I kind of get them to understand what shoe that they want? How do I get them to find the right size for themselves? Like over here, you can't even see it over here, but at the bottom, it says wide. I mean, that's brilliant, right? I mean, like I have wide feet and I love wide shoes. And this is what it does for you. So look at how design is playing a role. Or wait, let me actually rephrase that. Look at how interaction design is playing a role. Because all of this is creating that greater than experience for you. And that becomes very, very important. Great, all good. Let's start moving on. Let's move on. The second thing is designing for social credit. Now, how do you go about designing for social credit? And all of these are very, very recent examples. You know, it took me some time to actually dig them out, except for a few of them, like the turquoise cottage is an oldish example, but I love it. I love it for what it does. You know, like I wish I had worked on that. But if you have to design for social cred, there is this store in Denmark called Carlings. So it's like a little fashion store. Now, see, this is the big thing, right? What they said was, actually what, you know, wait, I'm going to play a video and I hope it doesn't lag because it's there. But without me saying anything, let's kind of look at this video and then let's talk about it. Can you all see my screen? I love this example because, you know what, the whole thought was to say, you know what, if you kind of look at the whole world, a lot of millennials, lots of these Gen Zs, what they do is they buy clothes so that they can pose in it on Instagram. And that's it. They hardly wear it after that. So look at the amount of carbon footprint that's being generated, right? And as a socially responsible act, what Carlings realized is that, hey, you know what? If people are only buying clothes to pose on Instagram, why don't I build clothing that's very digital? And this is what they did. They created an entire interaction to say that, you know, what we will do is we will create clothes that people can buy online, not real clothes that people can actually kind of wear online. And this is what they ended up doing. They created something which, and people are paying money for this, right? Can you believe this? This is like a great thing. Like people are actually paying good money for it to say, yes, you know what, I want to pose with this on Instagram. So look at this guy, he's not bought what he's wearing. And I thought this was brilliant because by just helping you realize, by looking at understanding what were the real motivations to buy clothes, what Culling did was created a digital clothing collection. I mean, why would someone create a digital clothing collection? And I think this is brilliant. The way they went about doing this is brilliant because it did, you know, it did so well for them. And this is what they get to be known about for. So this was the second example, right? To say that how do you look at interaction design? How do you create a greater than experience for people? And look at this is a great thing. I mean, people, I don't even have these clothes, but hey, you know what? I have a picture of me wearing these clothes. And I think that's very, very important to kind of look at. Let's move on and to try and look at these things, right? Now, what I call is design for the unarticulated. Again, Steve Jobs said people won't tell you what they want because they don't know what they want. And sometimes they can't tell you what they want. So how do you kind of design something for them? So McDonald's, I mean, right, of all the people, McDonald's did this really, really cool thing because they said, you know what, everyone's gone to McDonald's and got a burger. This is what they do, right? The burger comes in, they have the sheet of paper, they put the burger in the middle, they wrap it up on all four sides, turn it around and give it to you. Now, how are you going to eat it? You're going to turn it around, open up the four place, hold it, and then eat it. Now, it works brilliantly for all of us because we don't think about it because we have two hands and both our hands are working function. But what about people who have deformities in hand? How are they going to open that stuff and eat it? How are they going to do this stuff? Now, that's something to think about, right? The people with deformities are not going to tell you, you know what, create something for me that I can eat a burger with. But McDonald's said, you know what, I see how people are interacting with the burger and with the wrapper and eating. Can I design something for people who have deformities? And this is what they did. They created this thing called Eatquil, which is equal. And it's in accessible packaging. Look at how the burger is placed. Look at this brilliant packaging, you know, and look at this lady eating it comfortably. And that's great. I mean, you know, you move out of the screen, look at life around you and start to see where you can actually drive great interactions. Now look at how she's interacting with that packaging. It's easy for people to eat a burger. I mean, everyone should be enjoying their burger. Why should something do something like that? I think this is a great example to say that people are not going to tell you this stuff, you know. And for people who have these, you know, they are unable or they are like challenged, is it possible for us to actually design for them? Let's go about designing for them. And that becomes important. Let's take another great example, right? I found this on LinkedIn. And, you know, after I spoke with Vijay, I was like constantly scoring places. I'm like, damn, this is a great idea. I don't have to say anything. You guys can just read it. Saying the braille written on the bar describes the landscape. Wow. I mean, like for a blind person, you're telling the blind person by just moving his hand on the window railing, he knows exactly what he's looking at. Now, this is wonderful, right? This is a way to tell you that, hey, you know what? Hey, I know you want to see this thing, but hey, how can I help you see? Can I help you see through touch? And that's exactly what they did. This is what was really kind of going on. And I think this is lovely because this is what interaction design is all about. This is to say that how do you interact with things? You know, of course, technology plays a huge role in doing everything, but it's important to say, how do I interact with things? How do I look at around me? And I'm going back to saying, context, objective, behavior, outcome. Now look at this. This is the outcome, right? A blind man can appreciate the view. That is the outcome. And this is so great. And this is the wonderful way to kind of, look at interaction design and then try and see how that kind of works. Another way to kind of look at interaction design, right, and creating what I would call a greater than experience is to say, how do you go about bridging the gaps? Now, this is another great example of Samsung Good Vibes. I don't know if I was with y'all, I would have asked if people have heard about Samsung Good Vibes. Has someone heard about Samsung Good Vibes? Yes, no? Okay, cool. I take it that. Great. So this is it, right? Now, Samsung Good Vibes is built. Samsung built this feature for deaf mute people to say, how do deaf mute people send text messages? How can you actually go about doing that, and how do you actually go about reading it? And like, how do you kind of, go about figuring things out? And this is what they actually did. Deaf blind person. Sorry about that. Yeah, actually that was it. So if you look at someone who is deaf blind, I mean, that's like the worst challenge that you can have, if you're deaf blind. And this is what they did. They created a Morse code language. This is a wonderful example of interaction design that leads to a greater than experience. This is such a greater than experience, guys, I think. So it's very simple. You take the phone and in Morse code, you type, and it's simple. It's very, very easy for a deaf blind person to type in Morse code. And that's what they end up doing. They type in Morse code. And what the app then does is translates those Morse code inputs into actual text. And it can be sent to the person that you want to. And look at it that way, right? People are talking to each other. So what you only need to do is teach a deaf-blind person Morse code language and say, you know what, this is where it is. Now, while we were at Geo, we would always say, how do you design for the blind people? How do you design interactions for blind people? Because that's a big challenge, right? To say, how do you design, man? It's like a glass screen. How do you design interaction for a blind people with a glass screen? This is a great example that allows people to actually go about text each other. And that becomes very, very important. So I thought this was brilliant because, again, looking at that context to say, hey, this is blind. I don't know how they're going to see the screen. What is that behavior you want to influence? Yes, you know what? You want them to connect with people. You want them to connect with people, and the outcome is a conversation. And that is what you really want. So it's very, very important to figure out, how do you define your 4 boxes? How do you define what's the context, what's the objective, what's the behavior, and what's the outcome? And Samsung Good Vibes has done it really, really well. I enjoyed reading this. It's also got a nice 2-minute video. If you guys just Google Samsung Good Vibes, you'll get a fair sense of how the video is. I don't want to play the video over here. I said, let's just kind of, keep with the flow and then do that stuff. Okay, great. Let's move on. Let's try and understand more things, right? A few more examples so that you'll get a fair sense of the idea of what I really want to do in this conversation is impress upon this idea that the experience is greater than the sum of all interactions. And the more and more and more you keep that in mind, the better you will be able to build interactions. Now, the whole point goes down to say, how do you design for personal connections? Now, this was a speculative idea, but it's still a great idea. And this happened during when Vijay and I were at Geo. Incidentally, just a small plug, the Geo whole branding has been done by Interbrand. So, we worked with Interbrand Sweden and Interbrand Bombay, sat down and then built the entire Geo experience the way you see it right now. But yeah, so the point was to say this, right? That you're a country of 1.3 billion people. Now, the question is very, very simple, is how do you design for a personal connection with your phone? How, if like there are 3 people with the name Vijay, how does Vijay 1's phone differ from Vijay 2's, differ from Vijay 3's? And that becomes very, very important. So this was a great, and we actually even got it prototyped, so we worked with someone from, I believe, Sweden, who kind of came in and then gave us a prototype to say that, what, this is what you want and this is what we can do. So earlier, the logo was very, very different. But then what we had this big challenge, and we said, we have one geo logo, but can 1.3 billion people have 1.3 billion logos? Now, that's a great example of interaction design. And this is what we actually proposed. And I'll also tell you how it is possible. And it is very, very possible to do this, because when you sign up for Geo, your data that you input into the Geo form is going to be very different from someone. Even if they have the same name, they will have a different date of birth, or they will have a different address, or they will have a different mother tongue, or they will have a different something else. But the point is very, very simple, is that when people input their details into the form, at the back end, can we start generating a logo for them? And I've seen it actually happen, and I've worked on the prototype, and I thought it was brilliant. Because when I type my name, Satish Krishnamurthy, the logo will start kind of becoming alive. It will start changing color. It will start changing color. And then there was this gentleman called Joydeep Dasgupta. When he typed Joydeep Dasgupta, the logo will come alive, but the logo for him is different from the logo for me. And I think it's very, very important that, see, look at it that way, right? This is the zoomed out picture, is to say, can I create something that's personal? Then you have to zoom in to say, okay, now you tell me how to make it happen. And that becomes very, very important, because that's what Mukesh Ambani wants, right? He's saying all of these are great ideas, but now, hey, you please tell me how you're going to make it happen. How are you going to make it a reality? And I think this becomes a great example to talk about, to say, oh yeah, you know what? Everyone can have their own logo. There is no reason for people not to have their own logo. So yeah, like I said, this was speculative, and I'm sharing this because this happened like 9 years ago. Yeah. So, it is all a great idea. And I think, if it happened, it would have been brilliant. It would have been path breaking. It would have been a wonderful case of interaction leading to a greater than experience. And that was it. But then something even closer, something that happened a few months ago. If you guys have known of this rapper called Doja Cat, this is what she did. And she said, hey, you know what? I'm going to teach people to code. And this is what I will do, is I will create a music video. And if y'all are in interaction design, y'all should totally go out and see this thing called Doja Code, DOJACODE. Now, this is great. And I did it, I did it. And it is wonderful because it plays a music video. In the middle, they have code that kind of tells you to say, oh, you know what you can do is paint the queen's nails. And I typed over here magenta, and see, this is what happened. And it says over here, activate Doja power. What is the particle's color do you want? Oh, you know what? They'll give you options. So I typed green, yellow. What is the particle's height that you want? I typed 1000. What is the particle's speed that you want? I typed 10. And I'm wonderful, because this is great, because now the Doja Cat video is actually your video. It's something that you have coded. It's not anyone else's video. And I think this is wonderful, because what you're actually seeing is that you're getting a chance to write code. You're getting a chance to learn code. You're getting a chance to actually go about creating your own music video, because now everything happens through software, right? A lot of this can happen through software, and a lot of this can happen to real-time software. And I think that becomes very, very important. Great. The pace is good, not too fast, not too slow. Brilliant. Let's move on. We have a few more examples, and then we can start discussing and try and do that. The next thing that I call is what I call design for substitution. The very fact is to say that when you want to create something that is not there, how do you go about doing it? So there's this brilliant, there is this store in Canada. Incidentally, it's called Canada Goose. And they wanted to sell their warm parka jackets. And these jackets were so warm that you could actually go and experience it in like -5 degrees weather. But the problem is that when you're in a store and you're buying this parka jacket, how are you going to experience how good it is? So this is what they did, they created this virtual room. So in the store, you can go into this virtual room, which is actually like -5. And they've kind of created this little screen that makes you feel like you're in the mountains. And they've kind of, they start dropping snow from top and it's bloody cold in there. Now, this is what really happens, So I want to sell something. And I go back to saying this is brilliant example of interaction design. This is a brilliant example to say, hey, you know what? This is what I want people to take away. This is what I really want people to do. And that's what they did. They said, hey, let me create a virtual room that is like, actually -5 degrees in weather. And let people wear this jacket, go and stand in and then figure it out, Then this is what Canada cold is like. And this is what will kind of work out for them. And that's what I thought this was a great example to drive that. The last example that I really wanted to talk about was to basically say, how do you design for sustained fun? Now, this was something that we did while I was at Sideways. We actually built toys for Disney. And it's nice, when you go down into like toy design, like we went and met like 200 kids. And a lot of this was worked on by my former colleague now, Krishan Jagota. He's the one who spearheaded this entire project. And he's the one who invented what I'm going to show you next. But the point is, before that, I wanted to talk a little bit, right? A little bit framework on how do you create fun in something. Fun just doesn't happen. Fun comes along, right? There are emotions that are kind of, attractor emotions, which would mean to say that when you see something, you're like, oh, what is this? So there is a curiosity around this. Then you're saying, oh, what does this do? Oh, this is great. Oh man, this is fun. So fun happens after a while. And what we realize is that when you want to build a toy, what you really need to do when you build a toy is that you need to keep sustaining this fun cycle over and over and over again. Because, we went and spoke to people who created these houses, these castles. Now, what would you do? Once you build that castle, you keep it on the showcase, man. And that is no fun. I mean, the fun is over after you've built that castle. But when you play a game of cricket, the sustained fun constantly keeps happening because, constantly there is something or the other going on and going on and going on. So there are attractor emotions and there are detractor emotions. And what we said was something, where drop-offs happen. So for example, we realized that packaging plays a huge role that, when people are trying to open the toy, they can't open the toy because the packaging is bad. Or the game needs 4 people to play, but you only have 3. But people try and figure this thing out. So this is a great example. And this is what Krishan actually did, right? Where he took something that was whatever, like, a few thousand years old, the dice. Everyone's played with the dice. And these are all prehistoric dice, like prehistoric dice. And this is what it is, right? I mean, the Romans played with dice all along. The point is to say that how do you reimagine the dice? How do you go about creating a new way to play the dice? And this is what he created. It was called Dicey. It's nothing but the dice, but it has a twist. And what is the twist? Is that there is a tech component inside the dice. I mean, I was there. I didn't work on this project, but I kept seeing it happen on the sidelines because it was happening around me while I was at Sideways, where you have a tech component inside with 2 LED bulbs that either beam green or beam red. Now look at all the fun that you can have with these colors, right? And you can make your own game. So if 2 of us are playing a game, we are going to say, let's see who reaches 100 first. You roll the dice and you get 5 green, you get +5. I roll the dice, I get +7. Now you roll the dice again, you get 3, but it's a red. So you do a -3. Now imagine playing snakes and ladders, man, with this. You don't need snakes. And that is what the beauty of something like this is. In fact, this just got launched, I think last year. And now it's a part of the Hamleys collection. So Sideways works with Hamleys and it's a part of the Hamleys collection. And that's what really happened. And I thought this was a great example, of how you can zoom out, see this big picture, and see how you can actually go about tweaking things. Look at how the interaction is. And this is a great example of what we call greater than experience. You've taken a dice that it hasn't changed for hundreds of years. And what you've done is you've added this little twist to it. Now you can create games. You can have one little strip, and which is like a running race in between three people, and everything on the dice. You like drop the dice and you go 3 steps front, 2 steps back, six front, six back, and that is what it is. So what this really does is that it tells you that, hey, you know what, a lot depends upon, and this is what we also call play patterns, right? To say that play patterns are different for different things. The play pattern for this is, shaking it in hand and then dropping it down, and this is what really happens. So ultimately, the point is to say, how do you design something that gives you sustained fun? And I thought this was a great example to kind of, share with you, so that, at least you get a fair sense of how this really kind of works. So that is broadly what I really wanted to say. The big point again that I kind of come down to, and what I really want to talk about is to say, as interaction designers, yes, you all are studying interaction design, no doubt about it. But please keep in mind that the whole experience is greater than the sum of all interactions. And that's the only thing to keep in mind, because once you keep this in mind, you will get the right interactions that need to be designed. You will be able to create that greater than experience that is really, really needed. And whether it is on screen, off screen, whether it is hybrid, whether it is technology, whether it is non-screen technology, everything, all your interactions can start driving what I would call a greater than experience. So ultimately, what I want to leave you all with is to say that if you design consumer experiences to build brands that everyone loves, I mean, that's very, very important, so whatever it is, whether you're working with, a tech company, or whether you're working with someone else, let's strive to build customer experiences and design experiences so that we can build brands that people love. Because, ultimately, we are nothing but a sum total of all our experiences. And that's what I really wanted to do. Thank you for your patience. And yeah, it's great. Thank you. You guys have been patient a lot, sitting down and listening to me. But I really enjoyed working on this. Yeah. And I really enjoyed talking with you guys all about interaction design and greater than experience. Yeah, over to you all. Thank you. And happy to have a conversation. Yeah, I think if someone needs to talk, might need to come closer to the laptop or the mic to have a conversation.
Hi, Pratik. Prayas here. Can you hear me?
A little low. I don't know why, but I'll try and do my best to hear you.
Yeah, I hope it's clear now.
Yeah, much better, much better.
Okay. So my question is that so when you have a product and when you have interaction design, so I would broadly say the dynamism around the product makes it a component for interaction design, right? So how the product fits into our lives. So the dynamism around the product. So how would you say that a product that we like a can of salt, like use for spicing up our food. So
So can you repeat that again? What product? Like a what?
no, like a
Salt shaker.
A
like
salt shaker. A salt shaker. Okay.
a salt shaker. So
Yes.
do you think essentially, I'm trying to ask users who don't want to indulge in the function of the product. So
Okay.
they don't really care about, they just want to have an interesting product that they don't feel bored with using over and over again.
Yes.
And and it should also be a function that is understood. So, what, how would you break down that kind of criteria or that kind of need? So, the need for a product to do more than what it does.
Sure. So, hi, yeah, someone just came by us by the mirror. I get what you're asking. Sorry, I just went off video because I was trying to go close to the speaker and hear it. So I get what you're asking. Now, let me give you an example, right? There is this example of the company called Method. And if you've ever not heard it, look it up. What they did was very, very simple, right? The whole insight was to basically say that they are a toilet product company. And this is what we do with toilet products, right? We hide them out into the shelves because that's what they are for. And that's what they're kind of meant for. But Method said, why can't I create products which are wonderful that people will want to keep them out? And if you start looking at Method's product design is brilliant. I mean, you can, look it up while I'm talking also. Method's product design is brilliant because what they did was Method is like METHOD company or Method products. Now, what they did was they realized, the context of these toilet cleaners are that, everyone wants to hide them away and keep. Why should people hide them away and keep? People should be able to kind of, display them. People should look at them as great design. And that's exactly what Method did. It disrupted this entire category by getting people to say, hey, you know what? I have this cool looking bottle, man, but it's actually a toilet cleaner. And that is what they actually went about doing it. So going back to your salt shaker analogy, I'm trying to ask you, what are the things, if you look at the entire experience around salt shakers, what is it that people really want? Now, could it be really cool that you can kind of, find great designs that people can keep on their table? Can you tell people when the salt is getting over? Can you tell people, hey, when they shake too much, can you kind of give out one little buzzer to say, hey, you know what, you're using too much salt, you shouldn't be using so much salt. Now, there are lots of things that you can do. When I did this little project on this little internal project to say that let's design a lamp. Now, the first thing was to say that why do you need a lamp? You don't need a lamp, you need light. And that becomes very, very important. So the minute you even reframe your argument to say, I don't need a lamp, I need light, my table can become a bloody lamp. I can keep it on the wall. My bookmark can become a lamp. Anything can become a lamp. And is there a way for me to start reframing my argument? Is there a way for me to start reframing the conversation to say, hey, you know what? A salt shaker does only thing that's kind of, put salt out. But I want to do much more. I want to be the responsible salt shaker. And this is what I'm going to kind of talk about and do that stuff. So I think a lot depends upon how you look at the argument, how do you kind of look at the problem at hand, and how you address it. I hope did that answer your question?
It gives me ideas for trying to think about it. I mean, if I would put it into my own process for trying to rethink the salt shaker, it gives me some ideas.
Exactly. So I think, yeah, I like what you said is because The more you ask what ifs, the more what if questions you ask, the more you will be able to actually, arrive at something which is completely unconventional. And I think that's very, very important to start looking at things that way. True. But yeah, look up Method. I think it's a great company. It's a great case study. The more you read about it.
Satish, thanks. One question is, a lot of these examples, it's a daily example, a lot of this coming from Europe or the US. What is happening in India right now? Like, what are the big trends emerging? What are you seeing? What are the companies asking you to think about? So if you can just briefly share that, that would be great for us. Because there is a huge cost implications in developing these kinds of personalized interactions also, and not all companies have that kind of a bandwidth. But your railway example was there, it was brilliant. If you have some more insights and some more examples for us, that would help us think a little more potential of where we are sitting.
Hi, I'm sorry, I just lost internet connection. I thought I'll stay back in office.
Can you ask it again?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you if you can give more contextual sort of examples coming out of India, because a lot of these big ideas have some cost implications and becomes a very niche
Right.
product. Except the geo thing, which could be very well be a mass product and with a very low cost. That is brilliant. But if you can share some what's happening in India right now, what are the different trends emerging, what are the different companies asking you to think about in the interaction design space. And I think a lot of their examples open up ideas about interaction design, where this field is going, what are the students, what we can think about, and what are the different horizons we can look at. So thank you for that.
Okay, great. Can you all hear me? I'm sorry, my internet connection is a little upside down.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's look at what's happening in India, right? If you look at what's happening in India specifically, when it kind of comes down to interaction design, I think the people who are doing it, see, I think the way it's kind of working is that India is still in a phase of what I would call experimentation. People are still trying to figure things out. So if you have to look at interaction design that's kind happening, a lot of what I would call this human machine interaction is becoming really, really big. So if you look at cars, right, a lot of these cars that are kind of coming out, the way they allow you to talk, like I just got myself an MG 2 months ago. So I got myself the MG Aster. And it's a great example of AI because what the Aster, they have this little bot that sits in front of your dashboard and they keep talking to you, right? They keep talking to you about, oh, this is the weather today. Okay, go about, have a great day. And when you're driving, it'll keep telling you speed breaker ahead, or it'll keep telling you, oh, there is a left curb ahead, or it'll keep telling you there's a toll booth ahead. So what, again, I look at the context of what's really kind of going on. What's really happening is that the automotive companies are slowly getting into it. AI is becoming bigger. In a lot of spaces, you start to see AI getting more and more there. And I think that is one thing that's kind of really, really doing well. When it kind of comes down to, so that's one big example that I can think about, which is automobile and, interacting with the driver. It tells you that, your tire pressures are low. It tells you that you're running low on fuel. Like I actually ignored that warning and I almost ran out of gas. But I think in terms of things with respect to India, a lot of this non-screen interaction that's kind of coming up. I know that people are starting to experiment with these ride sharing. Like, Ola is probably going to start that pretty soon. Now, that is a great example of interaction design. You have these, you see them in BKC also, Bandra Kurla complex. You have these places where these blue electric bikes are parked, and what you need to do is go and you can unlock them with an app, take them around and drive them wherever, and then lock them back over there and do everything with an app. So I think people are experimenting a lot. People are trying to do, whatever they can, and, starting to do stuff like that. So I think a lot of that I'm starting to see a lot of that. And with data becoming really, really big, this whole idea of, being able to download things, this whole idea of watching stuff on the go, this whole idea of what I would call, like PUBG was big over here, but then there also used to be this thing called mini militia once upon a time. So when you're looking at gaming is becoming really, really big. You see kids in my building here. Like, we all live in apartment buildings over here, but kids in my building, you will see them all sitting together in one line and playing like a multiplayer game on their phones. So you start to see these things kind of happening because you start to realize that people are networking more, people are using the data, people are using the internet much more than possible. So you start to see companies experimenting with this stuff and saying, well, look at social viewing here, like watch IPL with your friends. And I think that's like a great thing that Hotstar is doing. And I think that's wonderful, and I think a few of people, and all of these, right, Vijay, we talked about them in Geo then in 2012 and 2013. We talked about social viewing, and now it's becoming a norm. We talked about being able to buy what someone is wearing, and now it's become a norm. I have seen that happen. Like, you can go about it, gives you a little cursor to say you can buy this stuff, you can pause over there and you can buy that stuff. So I think a lot of this kind of interaction, right, when you're looking at human machine interaction, when you're looking at trying to get things done interaction, when you're trying to look at network interaction, when you're trying to look at social interaction, a lot of this is kind of what I actually see happening in India.
So my question is, what is the long-term effect of the experience on the urinal, as the people have the tendency of getting bored, or even like they get used to of the something, right? So does the what is the long-term experience on the urinal which you have just showed
Oh,
us?
okay. No, so here's the thing, right? The Schiphol airport example, the fly in the loo example, right? That's what you were asking. So see, here's the thing, right? It is, again, I go back to saying it is very instinctual. It's not that you will never, because this is what it is. Like, you kind of look at it that way and you find everyone doing it nowadays. And that's it, right? If you ask any man, the first thing that you want to do is you want to aim for that fly. So it's not anything that you will get bored, and it's not anything that you will not aim for it. The first thing that you will do is aim for that fly, but then after that you might not. I think it stays, and I think that's the beauty of what I would call non-conscious design. I did non-conscious design for about 3 years. Like the yellow lines on the railway tracks will never get old. You will always be able to tell the speed of the railway of the train as it approaches you. It never gets old. And I think that's the way you're kind of looking at it, right? Even when you're driving, I'll give you another example, right? When you're driving on the highway and as you approach a toll road, you start to see these white lines. Now, if you pay attention to it, the white line, there is one white line your car will go through. Then another white line will come, another white line will come, another white line will come. But what they have done is, as you approach the toll road, they have reduced the space in between the white lines. So even if your car is going at one particular speed, you automatically think you're going fast, because now the white lines are coming in much, much faster, and your car goes tuck, 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 and then you're like, damn, oh shit, am I going fast? Oh, but that's what they want you to do, right? They want you to slow down as you approach the toll booth. Now, it's not that 10 times you will go through that and you will be like, Han, I know what these guys are trying to do. It is so instinctual and so non-conscious that you will do it every time. So I think when you do it the right way, it never gets old. It never gets old.
Hello, sir. So regarding the Geo logo example that you showed, like 1.3 billion different logos, does it really have an impact and do people even notice it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? Maybe you can take the mic a little away from your mouth when you're speaking. I think you're reverberating a lot. The logos you talked about, the Geo logos, yes?
Yeah, I'm asking how effective it is and do people even notice that it's different from one another?
Yeah, so see, here's the deal, right? What phone do you have? Do you have an Android or an iPhone?
Android.
Okay, great. Now, the gentleman sitting next to you in sunglasses, in glasses, what's his name?
It's a woman here. She's Sanjana. It's a woman here. She's Sanjana.
Oh, sorry. Hi. I'm sorry. Like a lot of things, you can't see things properly, man, over here. So, it's just a little blurred. So, pardon that. So, Sanjana, hi. Sanjana, what phone do you use?
I use the same phone, coincidentally.
Which one?
Android, Samsung Galaxy A50.
Samsung Galaxy, right? Brilliant. So, and what's your name, sir?
Sanjana, and I'm a woman.
No, the gentleman, the one next to you. Angapan. So, Angapan, when you look at your phone and when you look at Sanjana's phone, the home screen, the apps that you have are different from the apps that Sanjana has. Right. Now, that's what I call personalization. It's a great example of personalization. It never gets old. Everyone sitting in this room, whoever has an Android phone, they might have, like as Sanjana said, she has a Samsung Galaxy. Everyone would have a Samsung Galaxy phone. But this idea is not about you noticing it. The idea is about you connecting to it, right? So me and my wife both have this iPhone 12 mini, but I have the green and she has the red. A lot of times, imagine, right, if you had 20 phones lying over there which were all the same, how would you identify your phone? And that's what I really want to do, is I want you to identify your phone. I want you to connect with your phone. And that's what. So if you have two Samsung Galaxies, Sanjana, what she will do is she will just switch on and say, oh, okay, what is your screen like? Oh, this is my screen. Oh, this is my phone. So what personalization is really doing is that it is helping you differentiate your phone from other phones, number one, and it's helping you connect better with that phone, because when you see that logo on every app that you open from Jio, you automatically have a sense that, yes, you know what, Angapan, you are logged in. Maybe when you don't see that logo, you realize that you're not logged in. And I think that's what it really does.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Angapan. Sorry about that. Yes, Sanjana, I can't see properly over here. It's all blurred out. Huh?
Yes. Well, I'm actually a product design student, not an fashion one, but that's a question that I think I've been struggling with a lot when it comes to design. And that is the replicability of design. So not quite replicability, but maybe.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, if you can just speak a little slowly, then I'll just be able to kind of catch what you're saying. It's just that the voice is a little low. I don't know if the mic is working really well. Is it working too well?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, great. Yeah, please go ahead. What's your name, ma'am?
So I'm Advaita.
Advaita, hi. Yeah, please, Advaita. Yeah, go ahead.
So my question was, so I've seen a lot of great designs. The ones you showed, other ones I've seen in classes, and they're all brilliant. I mean, every design has its own strong points. But what I think is that I don't see these designs used where it would help best. Like, for example, I think there was also the shoe design or even Eatful, which was McDonald's initiative. So it's a great idea, but it's just a one-off thing. I have never seen that packaging in my life, that's one thing. And I'm just wondering, how do you kind of deal with this? The fact that you make the design, but it doesn't quite reach where it could help the most.
Okay, great. Fine. I was trying to get what you were saying, but if Advaita, I have to rephrase what you were saying is you've seen a lot of great designs, great examples, but you haven't seen them take off. Like you haven't seen them around you. And that is what your question is, right? To say that therefore, are these are good things to do or not good things to do? Basically, that's your broad question. Cool. So here's the thing, right? See, that's the whole pursuit of design, right? You're going to put things out there and you're going to try and see if things work or they don't work. And I think that is what every company is trying to do, because even when you're looking at online advertising that's coming to you on the phone, a lot of it is through A/B testing. And they realize that, hey, you know what, Advaita is not clicking on this. Let us not show her this anymore. Let her show her something else. Oh, damn, Advaita is clicking on this one. Oh, brilliant. Let me show her something more like this. So everything is consolidated and built up on the same part. So yes, I agree. There could be a lot of designs that, didn't really kind of make it. There could be a lot of designs that didn't really do too well. But, a lot of examples that I gave you, like Dicey, the dice, it's now selling in London. Oh yeah, sorry. Are you checking for the AC or you wanted?
I want to ask something further.
Okay, I thought like you're checking for the AC because it is actually hot in here, but yeah. No, true. But I just let me finish, sir. I just wanted to respond to Advaita and then I can kind of, come to you. But see, my point is, Advaita, is that the dicey example that I gave you is actually now in London. It's being sold in London. When I'm looking at Samsung Good Vibes, it has become a feature that they have incorporated into their phones. Whether people use it or don't use it, it becomes a different thing. So I'm saying, yes, the idea is to do design and then do better design. Like the Schiphol Airport fly, if you go into any urinal in a club, you will find that. Any men's urinal in a club, you would end up finding that. I found it in a small suburb in Bombay called Chembur. And I found that. And I'm like, damn, I've heard about this one. Oh, I know what these guys are trying to do because I know the science behind it. So when I went in the men's loo, I'm like, damn, you know what? They have the fly. And that was like the thing. So it is there, but I agree with what you're saying. Some designs don't really kind of, get well, but then, that's the reality of the business. It doesn't do too well. But I think what's more important is for you to take out the gist to say, damn, that was a good thought. Can I now help build on that thought and make something better? And I think that's what I wanted to say. Yeah. Yes, sir. Hi.
So, you spoke about two things. One is the context of good design, and one is the reality of things working in the market or not. Now, do all designers want to make their products work in the market, or they want to aspire for doing good design, which is cited everywhere, and academically it's going into the black books everywhere and all that. So, because I personally feel the two different contexts, wanting to make a product that works commercially and wanting to make a product that is appreciated design wise. How do you balance the both?
Sure. So I think it's a process. no doubt about it. I'm reminded when you talked about this, I'm reminded of there was a gentleman I knew at NID who created this really cool spoon, which was a flat sheet metal. But the minute is that when you lifted it up, it automatically took itself into the shape of a spoon. And when you kept it down, it became a flat sheet metal again. Now this spoon won the Red Dot Award. And like, damn, this was great. But he couldn't take it off the ground. He couldn't make it commercially viable. So I think, see, there is two things that you're talking about, right? One is the spirit of design. And I think the spirit of design lies in this first part of it. Because what you're trying to do as a designer is you're trying to solve a particular problem. And if it doesn't become commercially viable, maybe it didn't solve the problem well enough. But there is personal satisfaction to have done something like that. And that I totally agree. But I think the biggest success or the biggest way you can go about judging efficacy of design is that not how people talk about it, but how people adopt it. So the railway lines example that I gave you, now that's a photo that I have taken. If you Google Wadala experiment, we did this. I stood for 6 months on the railway track trying to understand how trespassers behave. And we did 4 things. From Wadala railway station, all of Central Railway, some 20 railway stations implemented it. Then what happened is Western Railway implemented it. Now, this is what is success. And the Western Railway implemented it some 6 years after we had kind of pushed that out. I was no longer working with Final Mile when Western Railway implemented it. But I felt good that finally, someone has seen the light of the day. Because the thing is that when you're looking at something that is commercially viable, right? And I learned a lot about this in Reliance. When what you do to make 100 things is very, very different from when you have to make 10,000 things. So it's very easy for you to make 100 pieces of the same design. But when you have to make 1,000 pieces, 10,000, 1 lakh pieces of the same design, that's where you have to kind of, get down and really make it happen. So I think commercially viable, not all of them go, but then the point is, this is life, right? You do 20 things and out of the 20 things, 2 things do really well. And that's always the way it kind of works.
But isn't commercial viability about marketing at the end of the day? Isn't it about how you push it?
Of course.
And how much money blow at it?
Of course. But here's the thing, right? There is this very famous saying in advertising which says that you can't hit a 6 of every ball. And I think that's the way you kind of look at it, right? Is that when you have an opportunity to hit a 6, you should hit a 6. But then sometimes you don't really have the opportunity to hit a 6 of the ball. Sometimes you have to take 1 run. Sometimes you have to just defend the ball and just let it be. So a lot of it, right, they say is about timing. Like all of marketing is timing. I mean, Blockbuster went bust, but Netflix had great timing. Look at that, right? Google Wave went bust, but Zoom had great timing. So a lot depends upon what your timing is. And, someone once said, I read this thing on Twitter once, which said that Zoom's market valuation before the pandemic was 30 billion. Zoom's market valuation during the pandemic was 200 billion. And 2 months back, Zoom's market valuation was 30 billion. So they said the pandemic is officially over because Zoom's market valuation has gone back to what it is. So maybe the days of Zoom are over. So, you've kind of, everything has a life cycle. And I think a lot is to do with timing. If you're right and you get in there at the right time, then you've got everything for you to ask. Sometimes you're ahead of your time, and that's probably one thing which probably doesn't work for you.
guess, Sukesh, there's no more questions in the room. It's kind of difficult to take time to digest everything, all the examples you showed and the different attitudes that have opened. So, thank you so much. If there are any more questions, then we can close it completely. Yeah. So, thanks, Sukesh.
Thank you. Yeah, very engaging questions. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your patience listening, and thank you for your interaction. Much appreciated. Thank you.